Despite the fact that, as Dr. Benson points out, the FBI claims there's no evidence linking bin Laden to 9/11, John McCain, in the intro to the Debunking the Conspiracy Theory Popular Mechanics book, goes out of his way to make the point that the evidence for Al-Qaeda's central role in the 9/11 attacks is overwhelming.
That's not the first thing John's lied about.
Ralph Schoenman, General of the International Tribunal on U.S. War Crimes in Indochina, spent 7 months in Bolivia in 1967, was imprisoned there after the death of Che Guevara. He worked with Malcolm X with respect to the battle for the Congo and that anti-imperialist struggle in Eastern, Central, and Southern Africa, negotiated the release of political prisoners. He met Malcolm X when they both were in London and was arrested in Bolivia for being in regular contact with Che during Che's struggle to assist revolutionaries in the Andean country. He was a member in the 70s of the Who Killed Kennedy Committee and is currently, as most of you know, along with his wife Maya Schoen, produces Taking Aim on WBAI. A freedom fighter, a revolutionary in heart and mind, Ralph Schoenman.
So good to be with you, brothers and sisters, and thank you very much for coming out. We are here on the 5th anniversary of an ongoing and continuous war, a class war against the people of this country. Some 5 years ago, shortly after the events of 9/11, I began a series of broadcasts. It was a 7-part broadcast on WBAI called World Trade Center Uncensored History. Maya and I followed that with the smoking guns of 9/11, 9/11 false flag operation, 9/11 in the capitalist state, the underlying politics of 9/11. We've been part, all of us together, in a process of documenting, unfolding, and exposing and delineating the nature of this ongoing war against our own people. That's what it is. What we're addressing here is treason at the top. If you look at every attempt on the part of the established media to address the issues that we seek to elucidate, they label these, quote, conspiracy theories, unquote. Well, brothers and sisters, the most frequently invoked juridical category at every level of prosecution in this country, be it city, county, state, or federal, is that of conspiracy. Every prosecutor, every district attorney, conspiracy to defraud, conspiracy to take property, insider trading conspiracy. It's the arsenal with which they always go into battle, and frequently without a scintilla of evidence at their disposal. The only conspiracy in which they have vanishing little interest is that of the crimes of our rulers. It's a label with which to dismiss things without having to think about it. But look, we don't have to go far to understand how power is structured in the United States. The New York Times has disclosed but recently that 1% of our people own more than 95% of the rest of us combined. The former president of Avis and American Express, who I like to cite, Robert Townsend, in his book Up the Organization, calculates that approximately 5,000 people, averaging some 14 corporate directorships per person, have control over what he calls the commanding heights of the United States economy. They fund both political parties. You know, in the recent election, the main fundraiser for George Bush was the president of Citibank, and the main fundraiser for Mr. Kerry was the vice president of Citibank. As Townsend describes it, they treat this country as their own personal whorehouse, and they consider each president their own private cowboy. This is a structured power whose identity is not mysterious. And although it is true that history is not driven by conspiracy, it is equally true that our rulers, perforce, conduct their affairs in a conspiratorial manner, and they always have. Every major imperial adventure has proceeded on the basis of such false flag operations and pretexts. Every one. Be it remember the Maine when they blew up their own ship in Havana Harbor for a long-established plan to seize Cuba and the Philippines. Be it the sinking of the Lusitania or the new Pearl Harbor that they speak of now, but the original one, 6 months in advance, they had all of the parameters of that undertaking. The Gulf of Tonkin, we have adumbrated these. This is but the little continuation of an established policy, of a necessary formula for whipsawing our population into a numbed acquiescence in long-established plans. Yes, it is treason at the top, and it is a form of class war. Yesterday, brothers and sisters, the United States Senate unanimously voted $68 billion additional to prosecute this genocidal war in Iraq. And but recently, in The Guardian in London, August 8th, Dan Plesh, United States forces prepared to destroy 10,000 targets in the Middle East in a few hours. Regardless of any impending ceasefire, they're speaking of Lebanon, the removal of Hezbollah or Iranian nuclear positions, the United States forces are prepared to destroy 10,000 targets in a few hours. And the article details that this operational plan is in motion. Let me point out to you that in the Armed Forces Journal in June 2006, Colonel Ralph Peters published a piece. It was his second major such undertaking, a previous one in 1997. It is called Blood Borders, How a New and Better Middle East Will Look. It's an operational plan, maps included. They're going to redraw the map of the Middle East and of Central Asia, seize its resources. For months, and indeed for years, they were calculating $4 to $5 trillion of short-term profit. Indeed, every administration in the United States since 1964 has had these plans for direct seizure of oil and for the decomposition of each state in the Arab East into its ethnic and religious components. Here's how it was described in the Pentagon. Without intervention, and this is 1975, we will face an economic and political disaster bearing more than a superficial resemblance to that of the 1930s. Indeed, in the Pentagon report of that time, they described what they called the Arab shoreline of the Gulf as a new El Dorado awaiting its conquistador. Every administration. Jimmy Carter, 1977, secret presidential directive PD-18, preparing for a force for rapid intervention to seize the oil-producing areas of the region. 1978, June 4th, Admiral Thomas Moore, chairperson of Joint Chiefs of Staff, deployment of forces to the East African and Arabian Sea for direct seizure of resources there. The Brookings Institution documents between 1946 and 1975 an average of 7 military interventions per week, 215 times. This is not a matter of some particular administration. It is not Mortimer Snerd, brothers and sisters. It is not the Bushmen. They are an integral part of this. This is an ongoing process. Indeed, as we are well aware, in the antecedent time prior to 9/11, virtually every intelligence agency had a full and developed documentation of what would unfold.